This is Exonerated, The Cost of Wrongful Convictions, a podcast from Word Radio. In this limited series, we share the powerful stories of people who spent years and sometimes decades behind bars for crimes they did not commit. We explore their fights to reclaim their freedom and realize justice from a system that punishes them unfairly. These interviews were first broadcast live on Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson and are now presented as a podcast so more listeners can hear directly from those impacted by wrongful convictions. Exonerated is presented in partnership with the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. This podcast is brought to you by Marone Law Firm, standing by your side when it matters most.
Folks, exonerated clients of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project often pursue further relief for their wrongful convictions, which commonly involves engaging in litigation and related discussions with the City of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. James Kelly, who we originally planned to interview tonight, is dealing with a legal matter related to his exoneration, and he is unable to be interviewed at this time. The Pennsylvania Innocence Project has graciously arranged for us to have their client, William Bailey, tell his compelling story today so that Mr. Kelly's legal interests can be protected. In 1987, William Bailey, a decorated veteran, was arrested for the shooting death of his friend, Derek Walker. The conviction rested on the testimony of an eyewitness who has since recanted, and a detective's claim of a confession that was never documented in police files and was unwitnessed. Bill maintained his innocence, testifying he never confessed and presenting an alibi defense, but was still sentenced to life in prison. Decades later, the full police file revealed no documentation of a confession, but instead contained exculpatory statements from Bill and even pointed to another perpetrator, information that was never disclosed. After more than 35 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit, Bill walked out of SCI Phoenix in April 2024 and was reunited with his loving family. Quote, "In spite of loss and grief along the way, William Bailey is here to share his incredible story." Mr. Bailey, welcome to Evening Words for Exonerated, The Cost of Wrongful Convictions.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
William, I just told your story in a kind of synopsis form. I wonder if you can tell us your story in your own words.
Yeah, well, basically, it was a friend of mine. Him and I, we were together the night before. Mm-hmm. And the following night, Saturday night, we were at a bar. I left the bar prior to any incident or fight occurring. Mm-hmm. Right? And then as I walked out of the bar, I left for a couple of hours, and I came back to the bar, and I noticed that there was a police barricade. At that particular time, I was standing there watching like a spectator, like everyone else, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and the next thing I know, I go home and I'm being told that the person that I was with the night before, that he had gotten to a fight with a group of individuals in the bar, and someone shot him in the back of the head, At that particular time, I didn't really, I was like, wow, unfortunate, that he was murdered. And like a couple of days later, the police interrogated me. Well, they asked me for an interview, and I came in for an interview, and I just basically told them, I said, well, I don't really know anything or can tell you anything about what took place at the bar when the incident occurred. I said, I had left the bar. And the next thing I know, a week later, they were locking me up, and saying that I was the perpetrator in the crime.
Mr. Bailey, for that initial interview with the police, you went there voluntarily to talk with them.
Yes, yeah, because it was a friend of mine, and I was pretty much interested in trying to find out who murdered him, mm-hmm. and I didn't think nothing of it. And then also they had asked me if I would give them a photo, for a photo array. I was like, yeah, I'll take a picture, so.
So, yeah, and obviously they used that photo in whatever kind of lineup process they had.
Yeah, what they call it, they basically call it a bullseye ID, because from what I understood, when they did the photo array, right, and the witness, he knew all the individuals in the photo array except me.
Wow. And that's how he came up with the false accusation that it had to be you, because he would have remembered if it was anyone else.
Right.
So can you talk us through a little bit of the early days? So when they come, they arrest you. What was that? I know it was a long time ago, but what was that process like? Did you have a public defender? Did you what was going through your mind once you realized that they were accusing you of murdering your friend?
Yeah, well, basically what happened was after they had locked me up and I was sitting in the county prison, my family hired an attorney, right? This guy, I don't know where they got this guy from, even when my sister told me about him, and I was like, how good is he? Well, what is he, what's his background or whatever, plus it's the first time me ever going through this process.
You had never been in trouble with the law prior to this?
Never been in trouble in my life, Yeah. So basically what happened was, this guy, I got out on bail. That was the fortunate thing, is that they had put me on $1 million bail.
$1 million bail?
Right. And what happened was that I went through the bail process, right, of getting a bail reduction. Right. So I finally got a judge to hear my case, and the judge, he basically reduced my bail down to $100,000. Okay. Right, which I only had to pay 10%, which was $10,000. So anyway, I was out, and that in itself, I had lost my job.
You had already lost your job at that point.
Right, I lost my job. I was working at the Philadelphia Federal Reserve Bank as a clerk.
Wow.
And
So you get out on bail. What's your mind frame like? How are you trying to prepare yourself? How long was it before you got to actual trial?
It was almost a year.
Okay.
Right. And what was going on at that particular time is that, I have a family, and, you have to provide for your family. And basically I was working 2 jobs, man, and I didn't really have time to do anything.
Wow.
It was just really, that was the struggle, trying to, make ends meet and, just try to do the very best that I can. And like I said, that was the hardest part.
You're listening to Exonerated on WURD.
Insurance companies have lawyers, shouldn't you? At Marone Law, they fight for people with serious injuries, and they deliver big results. From car accidents and catastrophic injuries to medical malpractice and civil rights violations, they fight, they win. You deserve a team that gets results. They've recovered hundreds of millions for their clients, and they're ready to fight for you. Marone Law, get justice. Call 215-732-6700 today.
And now back to Exonerated, the cost of wrongful convictions on WURD.
Because you knew that you had that trial hanging over your head, but you still had to grind and work to provide for your family. Do you remember the trial at all, Mr. Bailey? How long it took, or what it was like, what it felt like for you to be in that courtroom?
It took them 2.5 days to find me guilty.
Wow.
And that in itself was a trying time, and listening to how the court process, and how things were going. And one of the things that really stuck out was how my attorney was not wanting to get the judge angry, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yo, man, they're allowing these police officers to get on the stand and just say things that weren't facts and true.
And your attorney was not objecting. He was deferring to the judge too much.
Yeah. He's like, and I was like, yo, man, well, why aren't you saying this? Or why aren't you objecting to that or whatever? He's like, oh, I don't want to upset the judge. I don't want to upset. And this was I think everybody knows, if you've been in the court process, criminal court process, especially if at this particular time up in City Hall, they had a judge up there named Albert Sable, right? And everybody told me, say, yo, man, that is the judge that you don't want to get.
And that's the one you got.
And that's the one I got. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So people had known that this particular judge
he had a history. He had a history of giving out life sentences.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you remember what kind of thoughts, feelings were going through your mind when you were sentenced?
Yeah, that was an unforgivable moment in itself too. Is the fact that when the jury found me guilty, right? It was in a way I was like, well, how is it that they only had one lone witness to testify against me, right? To convict me,
Right.
But even at that moment, like I said, when that moment where I was convicted, I'm gonna tell you, man, I fainted.
Wow.
I fainted right there. And next thing I knew, I was sitting in the chair because I didn't believe that they would find me guilty because, I somewhat alibi defense, of individuals saying where I was at the particular time that the incident took place.
So you were sentenced at a separate hearing. Do you remember your early days of incarceration? How are you feeling mentally? How are you processing this life sentence for a crime you did not commit?
Well, first time in prison. Never been in jail in my entire life. I think that was the first few months was the hardest months that it was unexplainable, the feeling of being in a place that that you don't belong. You're kind of like walking around in a daze, and you just, and I guess you can say you have a heightened sense of what's going on around you, and you may run into a few individuals who know you from the streets, and then one thing about prison is that they know what happened and how things happen in the streets. So when you get there, you're like, yo, man, I know what happened. I heard about what you happened. Everybody knows you.
They knew you were wrongfully convicted. They knew you were wrongfully. Wow.
Yeah.
Was there any solace in that at least some people inside understood a little bit of what you had gone through?
It says, so, you meet those guys. Yeah, definitely. Because, like I said, you meet guys who come from your community. And, they come from your neighborhood and they're the ones who like, yo, man, my cousin told me or my mom told me, and my family in Philadelphia, in West Philly, right? We've been living in that community ever since 1954.
Right.
So
generations.
Right. So our family was pretty well established in the community,
When you look back at your time when you were incarcerated, what were some of the ways that you strategized and survived that amount of time behind bars for a crime you did not commit?
Well, like I said, one of the things about being incarcerated and that you're innocent, that you're in a place that you don't belong, and you have to come up with a somewhat of a way to survive. And I think the best way that I can describe my survival was, I went back to some of my military training, and hurry up and wait.
Following orders, programs, regiments.
So those were some of the things that I was used to. And really and learning a little bit about the law and learning about, criminal procedure, because that's where it all starts, and writing letters. I don't know. I must have wrote over thousands of letters to different organizations, Centurion Ministries, and the Innocence Project,
Do you remember the day when the Innocence Project responded?
Yes. And we was just talking about this earlier, and I was in Virginia, right? Because the Pennsylvania prisons were overcrowded, and they had to move Pennsylvania prisoners from one state to another, right? What they call an interstate compact, right? So I wound up in Virginia, and one day my unit manager calls me in, and he's like, "Bailey, there's some people who wants to talk with you." I was like, "Well," he said, "Well, just hold on. They're getting ready to call back." Right. And when they called back, I was on the conference call with them, and it was the Pennsylvania Innocence Project here at Temple University, and that was like one of the happiest days of my life. They said, "Mr. Bailey, we are looking into your case, and we would like to do a preliminary investigation into your case," and that turned into a primary investigation, and that turned into, my case going before the board, and the board giving me a unanimous decision and taking on my case, But basically, it was almost like an 8-year process, man. Yeah.
That is excruciating to hear that. Do you remember the day that you walked out of SCI Phoenix?
Yeah. Well, anyway, they bring me down to Phoenix. It started on March the 7th. I was supposed to go to be in court, right? They brought me down, and March 7th, they bring me down, and my lawyers come down and said, "It ain't happening today," right? Due to the fact that the family of the victim did not respond to the notification, right, that I was being released. So the court date was postponed to April the 4th. So I'm sitting in Phoenix for
another month.
Yeah. Sitting there for Phoenix. And even the guards was like, "Yo, Bailey, I thought you was leaving today, you wasn't coming back," Man. So anyway, yeah. So April the 4th comes around, and I'm like, okay, hopefully everything will go, it's going to happen today, And I walked into the courtroom, and we go through the court proceedings and everything. And the judge, he looks at me and he said, "I would like to release you right here in the courtroom." He said, "But due to security reasons, we have to send you back to Phoenix. And by the time you get to Phoenix, the paperwork should follow you." But hey, riding back to Phoenix in the van and getting there and getting into the Sally Port, and the guards the sheriffs is like, "Bailey, step out. Let's get these cuffs and everything off of you. You're a free man. You're a free man." Wow. And and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. And to walk out of there, and my attorney Neelam and my daughter standing there waiting for me to walk into out the parking lot. That was it. And then going down to the meeting place where the rest of my family was, you know, and with, where we go to Mangione's.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
Family dinner with my legal team and everything.
That
and,
had to be the best meal you had in 30 years.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Mr. Bailey, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's fighting their charges, knowing they weren't involved in the crimes they've been charged with? What kind of advice would you give to someone who was in your position just a few years ago?
If I had to give any advice, I would say number one is to be consistent, you know, because you see so many guys in there who just, you know, you hear the stories about, you know, their cases and things, and you're like, yo, man, just stay consistent. Even to the day, I talked to a few of the guys that I left behind, you know, and sometimes I feel a little survivor's guilt about that, you know, because that was my family back there, you know, guys that I knew for over 30 years, you know, and like I said, some of them probably know me better than my family do, you know. So if I had, like I said, and I tell them to, you know, to be consistent and to get involved in activities that are life-giving and life-saving.
That sounds like incredible advice. Mr. Bailey, tell us what your life is like now, post prison. Like what's your daily like now?
Well, when I first came home, I was living in Maryland with my sister. You know, she refused to let me come back to Philadelphia. And I've been down there. I was down there for like 6 months, you know, before I moved back to Philly. So it gave me the opportunity to, you know, get my life in order, you know, due to the fact that I am a disabled veteran, you know, so I was able to take care of myself financially. You know, I moved to Philly. Was it February? I just moved to Philly in February. So
How does it feel to be back? How does it feel to be back?
Hey, man, it's a good feeling, you know. So yeah, I have my own apartment. You know, the VA. I'm working with the VA, and I go in for. I did therapy with them and everything to, you know, get my mindset and hey, man, it's just been it's been. I got so much gratitude, you know, that I listen to people complain all day and file grievances. And, you know, I said, you know, I tell people, I listen to some people, the people get up and they complain about everything. And I said, man, I wake up every day with gratitude, man.
Yes.
You know, that's, you know, and like I said, I hear people always, my life is this. I said, man, I'm just happy to pay a bill, bro.
Yes. Your perspective on the world is probably different from just about everybody that you know outside.
Yeah. And I said, like I said, it's the little things, man. It's the little things, you know, that we kind of take for granted. You know, that means so much, you know, to be able to get up and open up a refrigerator door and grab a drink or, you know, or sit there and watch TV or whatever, you know, it's just the little things, you know, and, you know, being able to look at your family and, you know, see how they have grown and, you know.
We're just about out of time, Mr. Bailey. Help our listeners understand the importance of the work that the Pennsylvania Innocence Project does for people like you and your family.
Well, they are my family. You know, they have become my family, and matter of fact, they sent me to Seattle, you know, for a conference, and that was very cathartic for me, you know, and to be able to sit around and listen to other stories and, you know, other people's journeys. I think it was Amanda Knox. She was the host, the special guests, and like I said, and just to be around people, like-minded people, people who've been through the same thing that you've been through, and to sit down and have those conversations, and and share your journey with each other.
Mr. William Bailey, congratulations on being exonerated. Also, congratulations and much respect to you, good brother, for your endurance and your ability to survive the circumstances that were put before you. Your story is extraordinary, and we appreciate you sharing with us here for Exonerated, the Cost of Wrongful Convictions.
You've been listening to Exonerated, the Cost of Wrongful Convictions, a Word Radio podcast produced in partnership with the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. To learn more about the Pennsylvania Innocence Project and their work to free the wrongfully convicted and support their reentry, visit painnocence.org. Exonerated is brought to you by Marone Law Firm, standing by your side when it matters most. For more programming like this, tune into Word Radio at 900 AM or 96.1 FM or online at wordradio.com. And don't forget to follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Word Radio, progressive Black talk media.